Today we're back in New York for another episode of Talking Watches. We'll be speaking with a man who plays second base for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's an avid photographer, and he also happens to be one of the few vintage watch collectors in professional sports. His name is Howie Kendrick, and today we're talking watches. So Howard, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Watches.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm so excited to be here. This is probably one of those moments I've been looking forward to for a long time.
It's our pleasure. I mean, we've been kind of following you from afar on Instagram and seeing you posting vintage watches, and we have to say you're probably the only guy in Major League Baseball that collects vintage, at least from what we can tell.
It was kind of one of those things I just fell into. I've always liked antique things, and the vintage watches just have so much character and so much life to them that it drew me in.
So you're in town today to play the Mets tonight.
Yeah.
So how are things going overall this year?
It's been a little up and down this year, but we've been playing good as of late. The team's in a good spot. And, when you come to play the Mets, it's always interesting because, they beat us in the playoffs last year. So, the series is a little more hyped up, but hopefully we'll run into them in the playoffs.
And so how did you get into watches in the first place?
I've been into them since I was a kid, just growing up. I think the biggest ones for me were like the Casios, the calculator watch, or basically like the Timex back in the day. For me, that's what it was, being a kid, seeing these watches and always wanting one. Mm-hmm. And now I've been able to kind of start collecting them a little bit.
What was the first vintage Rolex you bought?
First vintage Rolex I actually bought was this 5513. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those watches. I was like, man, I would love to have one of those. Yeah. And, the no date just gave a look to the dial that was just unbelievable. And this is, has a chapter ring, it's gilt. And just the patina on the watch, and that's what kind of really drew me into this one.
Sure.
And I think the biggest thing with vintage watches too, a lot of guys love having the metal bands with them.
Yep.
But I love actually having the straps because I feel like it's a different watch every day.
Yeah.
You can change it with whatever you're wearing, and you feel like you're always wearing a different timepiece.
And then from there, where did you go?
I also have a red sub, and initially I didn't really understand what red subs were. Like I just kind of, knew it was a Rolex, yeah. But, didn't really understand the military history behind it or the design history. And I got this one from the Ralph Lauren boutique. I was looking to buy a Pepsi. And they go, well, we've got a red sub back in the safe if you'd be interested. Ended up walking out with it.
That's great. And no regrets, I take it.
No, I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
I've had some watches that I've bought, and I've been like, man, why'd I buy that? But, I was looking at Talking Watches, and one of the guys on there goes, you're not a real vintage watch guy until you've bought and sold at least 10 watches.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I guess I fall into that category because I've made some mistakes, but over time, I think being into anything, you're going to make mistakes, but you learn from them.
Yeah.
And then you move forward.
So what was your biggest mistake?
I did like the IWC, the perpetual calendar, beautiful watch. And sometimes I get really excited about something. If you ask my wife, she'll go, man, you're really excited about this. You should think about it. So now I've taken that into account. But, I had that IWC and I really wanted it. And, over time, I just didn't wear it.
Yeah.
And, I learned from not wearing it that, hey, okay, maybe sometimes you should think about it before you buy it. And I got rid of that and ended up getting this deep sea alarm for it, which I've worn quite a bit, and I love the fact that it has the alarm in it, and just the whole character of the watch, with the dial and the history behind all these divers, and probably with my collection, I think the biggest thing is I gear more to the tool watches. I look at all the more time-only watches and things like that, but my heart's really in it for more of the service watches.
Sure. And why do you think that is?
Growing up, my family, like my mom and dad were Army. I have uncles that were Marines. Just the ability to wear a watch and know it has a function. Even with the pre-moon Omega, you've got the GMTs that were good for aviation. You got the divers watches. I mean, those things like that, they just really appeal to me because they were actually made to be used.
Right.
And I think that's why I'm so attracted to these watches.
Mm-hmm. And this is Breitling over here.
Yes, the Super Ocean. Now this watch, I love it for the size. I've always been a fan of big watches. And, to find something that was made in the 60s that's this size, I thought was really cool. It's got the slow chrono with no second hand. And, the only way you can really tell it's working is the dot pops up in the window down there. And, I was worried about the authenticity of this one because I wasn't able to find another one with the same bezel So I contacted a few guys on this one and actually found out that it's actually a rare bezel. It's a decompression bezel.
Interesting.
And they only made it for a short time. But, you know, for me, it was all about the design of the watch. You know, it's got the two-tone dial. It got the great markers on it, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, it's super cool design. It really is. And it's kind of similar in some way to the Hoyer here a little bit.
Yeah, and these guys, I mean, you know, all you hear is, you know, you need to own a Hoyer, you need to own a Hoyer.
Yeah.
And, you know, this fits right along with the rest of them. It's a tool watch, and, you know, it was used with the military, and, you know, it doesn't disappoint. You know, I've been wearing this one quite a bit.
And then this is a military Omega.
Yeah, this one's I want to say a 50s Omega 53. This is the latest one that I've gotten. You know, I've been looking for something with a T on the dial for a while.
Of course, yeah.
And just the dial itself, I mean, it's got some wear on it, but the markers are great, and, you know, I just like the look of the watch in general. And, you know, I think the biggest thing, too, was that, you know, the size of most of the vintage watches, that really got me in the beginning, because nobody was really making really big watches back then. And, you know, I really had to take a hit on, like, man, you know, this thing looks small on me at first. And once I got past that, now it's hard for me to put on some of the bigger watches because, you know, I'm so used to wearing the smaller vintage.
Yeah, that one looks great. It looks nice and honest, for sure. Just like this Tudor. So this is a late 60s sub?
Yes. For this one, just the wear on the dial, the patina, just the way that the dots have flaked.
Yeah.
And just the small rows on there, you know, and I believe this one maybe 7928.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't disappoint wearing it either. You know, the no date, just a very clean watch. And, you know, I wear this one quite a bit too. You know, you compare it with a NATO strap, or, you know, right now I have just a rubber strap on there. And, you know, I really enjoy wearing it.
Yeah. And then this is a GMT?
Yes. This is one of the only ones I've really kept on the metal band.
Yeah.
So I actually really enjoy wearing this one too, because I wear it a lot with my suits and whatnot. You know, when we travel a lot, I wear that one. It's just really clean watch, and, you know, it's just one of those ones that I've wanted for a while. And, you know, I feel like if you're going to add a watch to the collection, this would be one of those ones that you'd want to put in there.
Yeah. And then you got to have Speedmaster, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Speedmaster, you know, this thing, it's got a little bit of a tropical dial on it. It hasn't really gone out to full brown, but it's slight. When you see it in the sunlight, it works really well. And, you know, I actually found this one on eBay.
Did you?
Yes, this was the first watch that I bought when I got into searching for the Rolexes and whatnot. And, you know, once I got this one on eBay, I was just like, oh, you know. But this watch in general, I mean, just if you think about the history, going to the moon, I mean, that's every bit as great as, you know, Rolex making the divers.
Yep.
So I think the biggest thing for me is just having the history behind the watches and knowing what they were built for, what they stand for. And, you know, these companies are still ticking today. And they're still actually making the Speedmaster model. Rolex is still making the Submariners. And, you know, I think that's cool to be able to look at a watch and go, man, that watch came from this watch.
Yeah.
You know, it all evolved from there. You know, obviously a lot of these companies are making bigger watches because that's what, you know, society's asking for. But I actually think it'd be really cool to see people going back to making the smaller ones again.
So what is the, because we all have them, what's the grail? What's the dream watch?
You know, my dream watch has always been the Datograph.
Really?
And yes, I've actually always loved that watch. From the first time I saw it, A-Lang, I think there's just something about their watches. And their minute repeater is actually unbelievable too. I actually almost purchased a minute repeater.
No kidding.
And instead, I actually bought this yellow gold Yachtmaster.
Along a minute repeater, or which?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, for some reason, I was really hung up on Rolexes at the time, and I really liked the Yachtmaster. So I ended up buying it. I've never been disappointed with that watch.
Yeah.
You know, you can wear it dressed down, you know, whether you're casual or, you know, I even wear it with gym clothes sometimes.
It's a good look, you know?
Yeah, and
there's something about a yellow gold Rolex, you know?
Exactly. And, you know, it was just that watch. I don't think I'll ever get rid of it because I've fallen so much in love with that one.
And another thing that we've seen on your Instagram is that you're a big photographer.
Yes. I started taking my camera on the road with me because usually, you know, on the road, I would just sit in my room and be bored.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, man, I need to get out of this room.
Right.
So I started just shooting around town and fell in love with it. And then it was all downhill from there, and shoot Leica only now.
Yeah. What do you shoot with most of the time?
The monochrome. And I'm usually carrying around a 24 millimeter 1.4. And I've just really been enjoying it. There's something about a Leica camera, you know, that I can liken to like these vintage watches. They took their time and just really made a really great camera. And when you get the final result, I mean, it's nothing less than stunning. I mean, the images, I think, are second to none.